Bring out Elizabeth Sullivan.
The tortured souls cried out in agony as the flames mounted higher and higher. Burn, witch, burn, witch, burn, burn, burn. As far as I've said, it is known today the actual practice of witchcraft in 17th century New England.
Psycho Gorman, huh?
Psycho Gorman.
All right. So we will have to check that out soon. By the way, we are, as always, recording in scrotum sound. This is the way we do it.
That's right. The bounce.
We're a bit salty here, folks, but that's how we like it.
That's how we like it. Good and salty. But yeah, man, I'm telling you, you got to see it, or cool. We got to cover it tomorrow.
Yeah,
you'll thank me in the morning.
I'm already thanking you because from what you and Rob have said, it's batshit crazy, off the rails, and a ton of fun.
Yeah, that's my. That's my favorite type of stuff. I love humor thrown in with, like, it's not even horror at all, but it's got some gore.
Yeah.
It's just great. Yeah, the puppets, like they even showed, I was watching a YouTube video where they showed like the, how they were making the puppets and stuff, and it's all practical. Nothing too, nothing too ornate. It's just crazy. It's just, I'm telling you, man, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
I can't wait to see it. I mean, you're really hyping it up. Yeah. I think it's gonna be hysterical and just
it is
a shit ton of fun.
Absolutely.
Nice.
I mean, I'm looking forward to watching it again with my nieces and nephews, man.
Yeah. Not many movies do you want to watch again and like hot on the heels of the first watch.
Right.
So if it's pushing you to do that, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to checking it out.
Yep.
So that being said, we're here to check out or talk about 3 films from a director who was infamous in his time. He, not always 100% in terms of the product, the output of his productivity. So this is Ken Russell, and if you guys have no idea who Ken Russell is, you really should do some homework and check it out. But luckily, we've done some of the homework for you, and we picked some movies that, one of these films, Altered States, is a movie that I loved as a kid, and it was so trippy and weird and different. I really enjoyed this, and of course it was another staple of the cable TV, early 80s.
All the time.
My sister, I remember watching this with my sister again and again and again, and watched it with my mom too. And I'm thinking back, I mean, there was a lot of sex and really deep, there's a lot of deep themes in this movie.
Right.
And I think Altered States came out in 1980,
80 or 81 or something, yeah.
And I think I caught it on cable in 82. So, I'm going to date myself here, and I don't give a damn. But in 1982, I was 13. So at maybe 12 or 13 years old was like around the time that I started seeing all these movies. I know I caught The Warriors in 1980. I caught we discussed this a million and one times. These were pretty intense movies for a kid to be watching, but that's really what got me into films and into just getting into genre movies. And this was one of those weird oddball movies. And as a kid, I didn't know Ken Russell from Barbie and Ken. I didn't really care about that, but actors were the face of these films, and so I grew to look for the actors in these movies. And it was like maybe around 82 where I started caring about like John Carpenter or Walter Hill and other directors that really I enjoyed. John Borman, even though Excalibur was the only film of his that I had seen at the time, that name stuck with me. So all of these things push forward. But Ken Russell wasn't a name that was really on the tip of my tongue, but this movie was. And Altered States, man, it's such a wild ride.
It is. And then the weird thing that I found out recently is the screenwriter, Patty Chayefsky,
Yeah,
I believe, who that like it this movie that he wrote it, but he took his name off of it because of clashes with Ken Russell.
oh yeah,
It's so beyond the stuff that he usually wrote. Like he's known for what was this
Network.
movie? Yeah, for the Network. This one older movie called was it Marty? I think.
Yeah, he did Marty.
Um, which is very, you know, just sort of like to go from Marty to Network to Altered States. I
Yeah,
mean, it's really quite a stretch. I mean, these are very, very different movies.
absolutely.
So I thought, I mean, I've seen, I've watched parts of Marty. I never saw the whole movie, but the dialogue is really good in Marty, and he's known. I mean, even Tarantino's influenced by Shafsky,
Yeah,
and he I think in this movie in Altered States the dialogue was a little it wasn't that great. You could tell maybe that science fiction isn't really his thing, but the story, the idea of the story, I think is very interesting.
oh yeah, definitely. But I did like um, some of the dialogue, although
Right.
some of the characters I really liked it. Like obviously William Hurt plays this Eddie character, Eddie Jessup. He plays him as just this brilliant yet self-absorbed
Right.
scientist, and
Scientist. Yeah.
um, I just found all of these characters in this movie to be extremely interesting, and I didn't realize Drew Barrymore plays one of the kids.
I found that out as I was watching the movie because
Yeah,
then as I was watching, I was looking up, on Wikipedia and IMDb, and then I
yep.
see her. I'm like, what? And then yeah, there she is, little kid. Just I
I
guess it
know.
was like right before ET.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was like, "Holy cow!" I did the same thing. Like, I was like, "This looks like," and then I went to IMDb, and I'm like, "Oh shit!" I was not expecting it, And like I said, when you're watching it as a kid, or like I said, I probably haven't seen that movie in over 30 years, and
Same here.
yeah, but I enjoyed the isolation tank, the scenes with him regressing, his body transforming, and like this, him tapping into the collective unconscious, and becoming one with primitive man. Um, I don't know. I was trying to figure out what they were getting at in terms of.
I had to look it up.
Oh, you
I
did?
kind of I kind of had an idea,
Hmm.
but what it was supposed to be is because with his first transformation, yes, he turns into some kind of primitive Australopithecine or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then he goes in again and he turns into something almost cosmic. And what it is supposed to be God, basically. And
Right.
basically it sort of represents the death of God and the birth of man.
Hmm.
And so when he goes into that transformation and he becomes this supernatural entity, that is some kind of deity. It's a god. It's something
Hmm.
before human, but it's the creator. So that's what it was. And I was kind of I thought maybe that's what they were going for, and then I looked it up and
Yeah.
it was confirmed.
Okay. Yeah, because I was like looking at that, and at the end, he wasn't, transforming, and
Right.
he's becoming something, more. It's like but like you said, he tapped into the God within him. And I don't think it was like in the biblical sense of God, but
Right.
the creator spirit, or you know, but like you said, he was tapping into this primal being, that's within all human beings. So there was like really, um, it's an anti-religion or anti-religious movie,
Right.
although there's tons of quote religious experience in this film. But then you
Right.
realize that religion isn't necessarily belief in a supreme being, but
It's
religion
more
is,
spiritual.
yeah, yeah. And it was a very, this is not, and what I love about movies in the 70s and 80s was that you could never see this type of movie nowadays. This movie
No,
would
no, you
never get
can't.
made.
No. Right. Right.
And and I love that about these types of movies that fly under the radar, where these characters speak to you in ways that Iron Man is not speaking to you. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
and I'm
Right.
not shitting on the Marvel universe or anything like that, because I watched all of them and was a huge fan, and I was a comic book fan for years. So that's not what I'm saying. But after a while, those movies, they become long in the tooth. There's nothing, there's no originality to them. They're just, saccharine based, popcorn films. And that's great. That's fine. But I wish there were more thoughtful
Edgy.
and edgy and provocative movies
Yes.
being made today.
Right.
And
Right.
not even
Right.
just in the horror genre, which there's been a ton of really good horror movies in the last 10 years. And anyone who says, "Oh, new horror sucks," they're not watching movies.
Exactly.
They're busy watching the same movies that they always watch. So there's tons of really good movies, but there's not enough provocative, thought-provoking movies. And that's really what Ken Russell, he built his this oeuvre, right? Is that how I'm going to pronounce it? Is
I
that the right
think
way?
so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why
So
not?
um so he spent a lifetime, even if it was a low budget film like Gothic, right?
Right.
Ken Russell did Gothic. He did Lair of the White Worm. Um
Which
those
is
were
one of his
kind of,
later movies. Yeah.
yeah, those were some of the later films that he did, or even just like movies that people were shocked by, like horror. Um, he wanted to get under your skin, and he wanted to make people think about life, about relationships, about truth. Um, and he did that through these films that he made, and some of them were just popcorn films, and others were really these type like Altered States and the Devils. That and I'd spent years trying to find the Devils, and I have never been able to see it until recently. When you were like, "Hey, why don't we do Ken Russell?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, I like Ken Russell. Yeah, let's check that out." And I'm like, I've never been able to find a good copy of the Devils, and obviously in the UK it was like one of the video nasty. It was banned.
Right.
I can't even say like how many countries it was banned in. And for a while, and I didn't know this either, but we were talking after watching these movies, and I found out that it was written by um,
Aldous Huxley.
Aldous Huxley. Right, thank you. So
Hmm.
Aldous Huxley wrote this, and it was a basically a biography of this actual person that existed, and the church, you know, um, pulled him. I guess he was kind of, a lech at the
Well, he
time.
was. Yeah, he was definitely a scandalous. I
Yeah,
mean,
he was
he's
definitely
a
scandalous.
Catholic. I don't know what is a cardinal, a priest, or something like that.
Yeah, I
And
just think he was a priest. I don't know if he was high up in the church,
right.
the echelon. But yeah, I mean, he was a very interesting guy, but he certainly wasn't a Satanist, obviously. And they found out,
Right.
it was years later that they told this story, and then of course Ken Russell got his hands on the script and did his thing with it, and it was a very well done, very interesting film, and I really enjoyed Um, what was your take on it?
It was interesting. There were some parts I think where it just went over the top with it just went too crazy. You know what I mean? Where it almost lost its discipline. But there were certain things like that I thought were interesting in that it wasn't exactly historical because there were certain things that they mixed, like it's supposed to be set in the, what was it, 17th century, 16th century, and the like they pull up a metal chair. They didn't have metal chairs back then, you know, or the town of Loudun where it's set
Right.
had these white brick, and it was
Yeah.
structured very, it was an artistic way that wasn't real architecture of that time period. So these were definitely artistic decisions that he decided to take. They were wearing modern glasses, or what's considered back in the 70s, but so that was kind of interesting, and some of the outfits and stuff were also modern. But I think it did lose certain cohesion at certain points, but altogether
Like
it was very interesting when they, like with the orgies and stuff, it just went, I think he just did it for shock value.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think he could have been a little more subtle in his criticism.
Yeah, but that's not Ken Russell's way.
Yeah,
And
it's
he
true.
wanted to take a finger and stick it in the eye of hypocrisy. And I
Right.
think like you can't be subtle in terms in this way. You could tell that I think the source material of Grandier, the main character who was burned at the stake, played by Oliver Reed, who never lets you down, doesn't matter what he
Oh yeah.
does.
Oh yeah.
Oliver
Yeah.
Reed was awesome, and he was probably a difficult son of a bitch in his own right in terms of Ken Russell, and
Oh
the
yeah.
marriage of Ken Russell and Oliver Reed. I'm sure I haven't read any like a documentary or any information about what took place on the set, but I can only imagine that Oliver Reed butt heads constantly with
It
Ken
came.
Russell.
Yeah, it came to the point where they weren't even on speaking terms, because Russell even had a problem, like I said, with Shaefsky, who wrote, and he
Yeah,
was another person who had a very controlling, very a dominant personality, and
yeah.
so
Well, you
and
said that
so
they were so at odds that he took his name and he went under a
took his
pseudonym.
name. Exactly,
So
exactly. It
that's
was yeah, like Shaefsky didn't like the lighting, and it came to the point where Russell was like, all right, you gotta, he just ignored him.
yeah.
Shaefsky
Well,
would
and in
suggest
all
something and he'd
fairness,
ignore him.
Wachowski is, yeah, he's the screenplay writer and all that other stuff. But think about it, it's
It's
Ken Russell's movie.
exactly,
Like, yeah, okay,
exactly,
yeah, I appreciate you have input, but I'm going to do it my way. And I can
exactly.
understand if you're a director, you have to be heavy-handed. You have
Right.
to, you have to be a tyrant at times in order to get stuff done. You have no
Yeah.
choice. Um,
Yeah.
in a movie. I mean, just look when we did Vamps, and that was just independent. Me, you, and your brother were like, steering the ship, and we had just a few friends on set at any given time, and just how difficult it was to coordinate in your living room or
Exactly.
in an empty warehouse. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there weren't a lot of moving parts, and at times there was just one fucking camera and a boom mic, and it was still tough.
And it was still tough. And so now you multiply that by a million, with
Right.
someone who's, with someone like Ken Russell, and someone who is this, brilliant but difficult actor,
Sure.
like
Sure.
Oliver Reed. And so it's inevitable, man. It's
Yeah.
inevitable. But yeah, but it still had some, I mean, shocking scenes.
Oh
There was a
yeah.
scene, for example, with who played the nun? Who played the head nun?
Vanessa Redgrave.
Vanessa Redgrave, who's this like just this damaged, insane nun from the get,
Yeah.
and um,
And the sexual repression,
oh my
obviously,
God,
in the 17th century, and then not to mention that she's kind of damaged goods, and
uh,
she even says, she goes, why, most of the people in this nunnery, because they were,
right,
wealthy families that had too many children, and not enough mouths, too many mouths to feed, and so they end up here because they have no other place to go in this world. And
yep,
women were already not even second class citizens. They weren't even considered citizens. They were
right, right,
property, and which was, I mean, it was a terrible, oppressive time. And so, yeah, and so she's there, this product of this environment.
with the
And
horribly hunched back,
right, I was going to say
yeah,
deformity,
yeah,
and stuck in this nunnery. um it you can just imagine the things that went on. And when Grandier is having sex with these other women, and then the rumor goes around that he is, and he doesn't even look at her.
right,
So all of these things compile, one on top of the other, and then they were like, oh well, we need to just figure out how to get the things that we want. And so Richelieu used this as a political stance to get rid of an opponent. And
yep,
so that was the take on this, that obviously there's no witchcraft going on, there's no Satanism going on. What was happening here was just you know, purely
it was all about
polit-
power, yeah,
yeah, purely a political move. And I love the fact that this priest, who wasn't a perfect person, and decided to make a stance and say, no, I'm not giving in to this, and this is not who I am. And I may have been weak, and I may not have been perfect, but I'm a believer in God, and I'm a believer in his his teachings, and the power of redemption. And if I
right,
give in and admit guilt to something that I didn't do, then I won't even be forgiven from God. Like he'll forgive me for
mm,
having sex as a priest, and getting married and doing these other things against the rules of the church, but he never went against the rules of God himself. And
right,
I mean, he was willing to get burned alive in order to stand up for his beliefs, and to stand up for what, I mean, that type of conviction is humbling, to say the least. And Oliver Reed was amazing in that role. The
yeah,
scene that got to me the most was when they completely shaved him, his all his hair, and he comes walking out, and the whole courtroom is mocking him. They're laughing at him, and I'm like, Jesus Christ! I'm like, well, literally, Jesus Christ! Like, I mean, just put yourself in his shoes. The mocking alone, and the court, was like it was a circus.
right,
And
yeah,
man, I just the way Ken Russell portrayed it, and I think it was just a perfect storm. And Vanessa Redgrave was perfect as this lunatic nun.
yeah. I mean, she was so damaged in every way, physically, psychologically, everything. And and one of the scenes that was cut out is after he was burned at the stake. Uh, who was it? One of the other priests, I forgot the name, gave her his thigh bone,
Yeah.
and she started to masturbate with it, and that was one of the
Yes.
scenes that was cut out of the originals, and that wasn't seen in the cinematic version.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, that was brutal.
Yeah.
And then there was another scene with where they take down the crucifix. Now they're Catholic, they don't use just a cross, they has the sculpture of Christ on it, and so they bring it down and they start having sex with it. And that's another scene that was cut out.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, even in this version that we're watching, it was like a really that scene, it was edited in, and it was like in very poor quality because I guess that was the only thing that they were able to get the hands on. But my
Right.
gosh, it was a pretty intense scene. I can see where there's complaints.
Oh, of course. And when you
You
see that,
think?
but that's where Ken Russell comes into play, and that's
Right.
his style of of just
Putting it right in your face.
unflinching.
Yeah.
Right, unflinching. He puts it right in your face, and like I said, it's that you know putting his finger right into your eye, and you're along for the ride, and you're going to be. Look, I'm not religious at all. I'm not a believer. And I'm proud to say that that's my belief. But there are scenes when you're watching these types of things where it is cringeworthy, and like you said, the thigh bone, and she's masturbating with it, or you know, they're inside a church, and it's just utter debauchery. There's an orgy going
Yeah.
on, like, and wasn't the king involved? He came down, and
Yeah.
he says,
Briefly.
he gives him this box, and it's like supposed to be a relic of the church, and inside it and so they give this thing, off to the nun, and suddenly she's better, and the fit that they were in, they were suddenly cleared, and things were better, and they were like, oh my god, it's a miracle, and they open up the box, and it's empty, there's nothing in it, and they're
That's
like, oh yes, it was definitely a miracle, and they start laughing, and then they're like, all right, we're on our way.
right.
I was like, I love that scene because it was just perfect. But then they knew right then and there that it was all a lie, and
It
yet
was,
they chose to murder someone to get, as a means to an end, so they can take over the, control of that city. So it was
yep.
all a matter of profit, and yeah, I mean, like, I've never read the book, but I just purchased it after watching that. I'm going to read the book because I'm a fan of Huxley to begin with, and I didn't know about this, um, being a true story, and I find it extremely interesting. So
Yeah. I
yeah, Ken
think it
Ken
was,
Russell did it justice.
yeah, I think it's Huxley's only historical, non-fiction, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah.
Yep. But god damn, it was fucking crazy. I
Brutal.
was like, all right, I can
Tour
understand,
de
like, when
force.
yeah, when it was released at the time. I don't remember when it was released.
70s.
1971.
Wow. Before I was born.
So 1971 this released, and I mean, the Brits were notoriously puritanical. I mean, worse than we are, when it came to what they were willing to have shown on the screen, and they dealt with
And this was no small budget movie. No, there was a
oh
lot of
no,
money put in. I mean,
yeah,
just the whole structure that they built for that town, for that city,
oh yeah,
that was all built by hand. I mean, there was a budget. It was a serious budget for this movie,
right,
costumes and all that. The sequence of him getting burned, that requires a lot of money, you know,
yeah, it
and
was
and
well done.
they yeah, and they brutally they show him their flesh burning, and it was really aggressive
Yeah, it was
how it was
intense.
done.
It was
Very
intense.
intense. Very.
Um, and again, in keeping with Ken Russell's directing style, the intensity of his movies, it's undeniable.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that brings us to the third movie that we reviewed, Crimes of Passion. So, of the three movies that we looked at by Ken Russell, the Crimes of Passion is from 1984, and it starred Kathleen Turner, who was hot at the time. I mean, she was a huge star.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Hot in every sense.
yeah, exactly, because she was in a ton of movies with a sexual theme, um,
Body
and
heat.
Body Heat, right? Body Heat. That was I haven't seen that one in a long time either. That's one to watch again too. But this was the most disappointing of the three films, and a little bit off the the beaten path for what we normally review and look at. But we wanted to see something that was a little bit different. And so, just in case people are unsure, Crimes of Passion is an erotic thriller directed by Ken Russell, obviously, starring Kathleen Turner, Anthony Perkins, John Laughlin. Film explores themes of human relationships and mental illness, a mix of sex and suspense, and it opened to controversy over its content as well as negative reviews. So it's not a surprise, really, because Ken Russell, that's how he does it, and the fact that he probably was getting negative reviews and it was opening to controversy, he was probably dipping his bread in it because that's what I mean. Like that's the kind of person that he was, and if
Right.
people didn't like it, people shied away from it. He attacked social mores and the good old American relationship of marriage and the institution of marriage, where the main character, he goes with a friend of his to this relationship, like almost like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and these people are shitting all over men. The women in the group are shitting on men. The men are shitting on women. It's like it's just a festival of hatred. And they were just talking badly about the opposite sex, and then finally they're like, "Well, why are you here? Tell us a little bit about you." He's like, "Well, I'm just here because my friend asked me to come. I'm here like for support." They're going through. They're like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Oh, you're probably a bad lay." He's like, "What? Me?" He's like, What are you talking about?" "No, I'm not." And he's like, "Yeah, well, try being a good lay when your wife is frigid and she doesn't want to have sex anymore." And then he goes from, you know, saying how great their marriage is and how he loves his wife and there's nothing wrong with their relationship, to being opening up and being honest that he and his wife don't have sex anymore, and it's you can't get her to open up and do oral sex and this and that, and like, and then he starts, like, he's like, wait a minute, he backs away from it. He's like, "I'm not getting into this with you guys, this isn't why I'm here, and my relationship is good. It's not perfect, but it's not as bad as what everyone's saying." So right at the beginning, you get a sense of he's not being honest with himself.
Right.
And he's probably not been honest with himself since high school when they were, dating.
First
So
dating.
this
Yeah.
was, yeah, so this was his high school crush. And so he owns an electronics store, and he also does a little bit of surveillance work or private detective work on the side, and he gets a gig, and the guy says, "I think this person is stealing from me." And they own he's a designer, a clothing designer or something to that effect. And
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah, and so he's like, "I think this woman, Kathleen Turner, she's been here, but you know she's a great worker. Like, she's fantastic, and she does these designs. She's here before anybody else. She's the last to leave, but I think she's selling, secrets, my trade secrets, and my business
Right.
is
The
suffering. I want you
stitches
to
and stuff like
follow
that.
her and find out who she's meeting with and all this other crap." So he follows Kathleen Turner, and he realizes she's not selling trade secrets of this business.
She's selling
After
her
hours,
body.
she's selling herself, right? She's a prostitute. And so she's meeting with Johns in some seedy motel that she's renting. She has a beautiful home, this condo, it
Like
looks
a
like.
castle. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
like
huge.
she's got a condo in this castle, and then he realizes, who she is, and she's got this crazy double life, and she's so bored with a vanilla world that the only way she can really, you know, get any type of excitement, the ennui of life, she's selling herself. So she's not just a high class prostitute, which you would imagine from the looks of her. She dresses well. She has a great job,
Right.
probably a six-figure salary. She's not a high class call girl. She's a street walking prostitute. I mean, it's a seedy neighborhood that she works in. And these Johns aren't upscale
It's not
Johns.
exactly. These are real
These
slime
guys are
balls.
dirty slime balls, right? So you're like, holy fuck! Like this is a really weird and intense type of situation that he finds himself in. And I was just, it's a little hit or miss in terms of dialogue and in terms of how they connect.
Yeah, it started out stronger, I think.
Yes, it did.
Right. But then it sort of, I don't know, kind of middled, like, as the story progressed, there were
Yeah, the
some points
second
that,
act it flounders.
yeah, there's also with Anthony Perkins, is it got a little too repetitive with him. Like he was huge at the time, and I think that they wanted to use him more,
Hmm.
but it's it could have been more of an Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs, where he's only on screen for 16 minutes, but no, they gave him, it was too much, and it got too repetitive with him, and
Yeah,
you knew the inevitability, you knew it was coming, but they just kept, just repeating him alone, kind of, watching her and,
he's
whacking
got this
off and stuff.
briefcase filled with sex toys, and you
Yeah,
know what's
yeah.
funny? We were talking
Mhm.
about 10 to Midnight with Charles Bronson. Remember, we were I forget who it was, but someone posted on social media. And we were talking about the picture of Bronson on 10 to Midnight. He's got this jack off machine. Remember, there was this weird like vibrator with like a sheath on the top of it, and it's like, what the fuck
Really?
is he doing with that? And
Yeah,
it was the
yeah.
same jerk off machine that was seen in the Bronson film 10 to Midnight
Really?
that the serial killer was using, and then fucking Anthony Perkins takes it out. I was dying laughing because that's the first thing that popped into my head. I'm like, "Where's Bronson when you need him?" I liked a lot of the things that were going on in this movie. I like the themes of the people being dishonest with what they want out of their relationships and what they
Yeah.
want out of life. And you know, I liked Perkins at the end where the main character breaks into the condo to kind of rescue Kathleen Turner, and they pull a psycho because Perkins is dressed
Yeah.
in Kathleen Turner's clothing, and
Right,
Kathleen
right.
Turner like finally like, and so it was unexpected, I think, because I hadn't seen this movie before, but it was great that they did. It was an homage to Psycho.
Right, right. I kind of thought it was him, but then when I saw the shadow appear, I'm like, wait a minute. So is that her as it was
Right, right, right.
happening? And then you realize that, oh, damn. So I had it and then I lost it. And then it
Right.
turns out I was right. So I was like,
Yeah.
damn.
Yeah, it was
But
the end.
yeah,
Like I said, the end of the movie, like the end of the third act.
yeah,
I think it kind of redeems itself. It comes back around, and then you see him talking to a group of people about his new relationship and that he and his wife are no longer together.
right,
And I
right.
think it kind of puts you into the perspective of people who are dishonest with each other. Everyone's living a lie. Everyone they're not who they pretend they are. And people have not multiple personalities, but there's multiple sides to their personalities, and
Who who was the you guys you and Rob, we were talking about that musician, I think from Yes.
Rick Wakeman.
He was in that movie.
Rick Wakeman was in what movie?
It was
This
in the
movie?
he was briefly in it. I think it was like a photographer, because I read his name. I was like, what?
Oh
I
yeah,
was like,
you're
it was
right.
just,
And the music
yeah,
is by Rick Wakeman. That's right. Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is awesome. Yeah, because we were talking about The Burning, and we did an episode of The
right,
Burning,
right.
and Rick Wakeman did the soundtrack for The Burning too. So, yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, because it was movies, and especially at that time they're so incestuous. Especially
Oh
if they
yeah,
become popular. They're like start working on with the same people, and so they show up in the same circles. But there was um there was less of an intensity to this film than I had hoped. And I think it was just suffering for lack of budget too. It wasn't it
Yeah.
didn't come across as a very robust budget, and the
I mean,
acting was not
yeah,
very I don't know,
yeah,
it was uneven at times, even with
right,
Anthony Perkins. I think there was a lot of scenery chewing, and he was kind of riffing on who he was as a persona,
right,
as
right.
the portraying another psycho, although he was a little bit different. I do like his character when he's like as a dressed like a priest, and he comes out and he has this little, that little wooden stool that he stands on when he comes
Yeah.
out of that peep show. My brother
Uh-huh.
had that little stool when he was a little kid. It was this little fold up little chair. And as soon as he did that, I'm like, oh my God, like just these little things that just in my mind just click, you know what I mean? And I just start chuckling because it's like I hadn't seen that little chair since my brother was a kid, so we were kids
Uh,
when he had it. But then I see Anthony Perkins unfolding this little wooden chair to stand on as a pulpit, and start
right,
talking
right.
about the evils of sin and fornication. And he just came out of a peep show jerking off to some woman who was dancing nude for him.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man, those scenes were like, oh, like I was
Oh,
like,
the
it
grossest
it
people.
just so nasty. Like it could just it just looked
It
like
looked You could tell
awful.
that people were masturbating in this, and no one is cleaning these stalls up. And even just
Exactly.
the woman who's dancing nude is like has
Just her
seen better days. You could tell that she was
exactly.
fucking strung out on drugs, and just a cum
Yeah.
dumpster. Just to be so
Yeah,
just
yeah.
crass.
Yeah,
Um
it was
ugh.
yeah.
And even
Yeah.
Anthony Perkins, he's like has this
Oh,
sheen of greasy sweat
sweaty.
on him.
Yeah,
Oh man, it was like
yeah.
Jesus Christ. And I think of like Kathleen Turner being this classy woman,
Right,
by
right.
day, and then fucking people like Anthony Perkins' character, or the other guy that comes in and he's having sex with her and like comes super fast, and he's like, "Oh, was it good
Yeah,
for you,
yeah,
baby?"
yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, you're the best." You know what I mean? Like she has to lie, and that's the thing. That's the
Yeah,
common theme throughout this entire movie. It's just
yeah.
lies after lies after lies. In fact, the only time that people are real, seemingly, is at the very beginning of the movie where they're in this meeting and the women and the men are shitting all over each other, but they were the only ones who were honest. They as shitty as it was and as lousy as the things that they were saying, they were being honest about their
Honest.
feelings,
Right, right, right.
which is really twisted in a way.
Yeah.
Um, so like I said,
But that was, yeah. I mean, that was the whole theme of the movie is about lying, about not being who you really are, not really, expressing yourself, and
right.
being true to yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, again,
What's
it was definitely uneven, and I think it needed some editing to maybe
yes,
shorten it a
it
little.
was a little long, yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean, out of all right, so let's rate them. So we're at Ken Russell's um are odd to say the least. Altered States, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate Altered States?
I'd give it about I'd say 3.5.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
at a 4 with Altered States. They're
yeah,
like you said, sometimes the dialogue between the scientists, they're shouting at each other and they're angry all the time, and some of the dialogue gets lost in the intensity of the conversation. And uh, for the
I gotta
most
give
part,
it. I got to give it to I forgot. I don't know the actor's name or even the scientist who plays the temperamental guy.
he was on Hill
He,
Street Blues.
yeah, yeah.
What
I
the
mean,
hell's that guy's name?
I don't. Yeah, it's a show I never really watched. I was never really into cop shows, but
Charles Hayde.
Yeah, he was really entertaining. He definitely added some spice to,
He
so
did, yeah, yeah.
I really enjoyed his character. He was just totally out there,
Mhm.
chew up the scenes in a very enjoyable way.
But
Um,
what I liked about this movie, even though William Hurt's love interest and becomes his wife, she is a super intelligent um,
yes,
scientist in her own right. And
right.
so when they find a connection, they're intellectual equivalents. And I
Yes,
really super appreciated the fact that they did that, because oftentimes you'll see, like, this this brilliant scientist or this brilliant guy, and he falls for this ditzy, and they don't give the woman credit or
right,
credibility. And it
right.
and it pisses me off, because generally speaking, intellectuals connect with intellectuals for
Yeah,
the most
yeah,
part.
exactly, exactly.
Um, and she was his equivalent. I think she was equally
Yeah,
as intelligent,
absolutely.
erudite, and I really appreciated that. I give it 4 out of 5. It again, it's not a perfect film, but it's so intense, and it's super interesting with a lot of really intelligent themes. So I liked it.
Yeah.
The
Uh,
Devils. How many burning
how many?
stakes?
Or yeah, yeah, burning stakes. Does that get? I think I'm also going to give it 3.5.
Yeah,
I think again, with the part in the middle, I think it just went too over the top, where it was just too much, in my
yeah.
opinion. That I'm always a less is more type person, and so when they just went just so crazy, and it was too long at those points, in my opinion, where
Yeah.
it just was like, all right, I get the point. You don't have to just keep hammering it and hammering it. So that's why I give it 3.5.
Okay. I'm going to give it a little bit higher. I'm going to I'm going with a 4.5 on it. I like the fact that it was unrelenting. I like the fact that they were over the top and showed the multiple hypocrisies of not just both sides. The nuns on their end, falsifying these claims and creating this fervor, and then the other side with Richelieu and his ilk capitalizing on it. I really just liked seeing all of those things, and then Oliver Reed stuck in the middle and just refusing to relent, and just it was a very powerful character. I
Oh,
enjoyed
he
it.
absolutely, yeah, he was outstanding, and undoubtedly,
Oh yeah.
yeah, he's his presence is just like you can't help but to watch the guy. He's
Yeah, oh
just
yeah, it was
he's got
riveting.
the voice and just the look.
Even he's sitting down in the church, and there were no like little private cubicles, and he was listening to people's confession, and the
Yeah, yeah,
confession is right in the middle of the church, which is incredible to me. I was like, what? There's no privacy, you can't speak. And if you know anything about the acoustics of a church along those
oh yeah,
lines, you can hear a mouse fart from one corner of the church to the other. A pin drops, and you know where it is. It's like a
right,
thundering echo. So even a whisper can be heard throughout the church. And I love the intensity of him whispering to these women
right.
who come to him, and even just this woman telling him that she's pregnant and all of these other things, or this other woman who's professing her undying love for him, and he recognizes that same way. But they're whispering these things. I really just loved Oliver Reed at that moment. I just the way he carries that character. I just had a lot of respect for him as an actor, and I thought he did an outstanding job. So
Yep.
yeah. And then the last, Crimes of
Um,
Passion.
Crimes of Passion. Um, hmm. I'm damn. I'm same thing, man. 3.5.
Yeah,
For some reason, yeah, it just kind of or let me see. I think maybe not. I think I'll give it a 3. Honestly, I think a
yeah.
3.
I
Yeah,
was leaning towards a 3, but watching the
yeah,
film, it has its moments, and I'm gonna stick with a 3 on this one too. Um, I was initially leaning to like a 2.5, um, but there were moments of where there is that dead zone in the middle of the film where like you said, it suffers from a lack of editing in certain places. But yeah, I do like and just not to beat a dead horse here, but when she goes into the limo with that rich couple,
yeah.
remember, like it
Right,
just
right.
like I just felt like
What
you
was the
could have
use?
yeah, like you
Yeah,
could have taken that out. Like suddenly,
y-
where but I get it. She's having second thoughts about the life that she's living. Maybe she feels
right,
like,
right.
like, why am I doing this? Or I'm almost as wealthy as these two people with a limo. I don't need to debase myself. But I don't know. I just felt like there were some scenes that could have been left on the cutting room floor, and it wouldn't have hurt the film.
Yeah, it didn't push the story forward. I don't.
No,
I
at
mean,
all.
I think it could have been maybe if he took one of the scenes with Perkins instead of having him alone, just doing, whatever it was he was doing, maybe you could have added another scene with them together or something like that,
Or show
with
us
that.
where he lives or where he came
Right.
from. You know what I mean? And give us
Yeah.
an idea of who he was, other than just some lunatic
Right.
walking the
Right.
street. You know what I mean? Like maybe he was homeless, but I would like to have seen a little bit more rather than him being so wooden. Or, maybe he had a double life. Maybe he really was a priest. I don't know. Um,
Right.
but yeah. So anyway, I give it a 3, and I think I'm being generous with a 3.
Yeah. There was also another thing with him, where they had him dress up as the woman, yes, okay, fine, throwback to Psycho, whatever. But what there was never any um, hint or clue that that's what he wanted. They didn't.
Right.
It just came out of nowhere that he
Yeah.
ends up dressing as this one. It didn't, or that he wanted to be her. Maybe, I guess,
Well,
sort
no.
of.
Remember, he kept saying that they're the same. That he's her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. So he was.
Maybe. All right.
They
Okay.
were alluding to that throughout the movie.
All right. Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah.
So
Okay.
was I surprised when it happened? Yeah, but thinking back on it, because he kept saying um, that it kind of made sense at that point. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. He was saying that throughout the film, that they're the same person, and he's
Mm,
her, and all that other stuff. So I think that's
yeah.
why they
That
did
that
that.
that 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 was
But
the
it
payoff. Yeah.
Yeah, but it lent itself to, like you said, to the Psycho homage.
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of Ken Russell films. Like we mentioned, two others, Gothic and the others. If you want to see um, a director who just loved to give people the middle finger with his movies, who didn't care about public opinion, who wanted to make movies on his own terms. Ken Russell was that kind of film director, and I really appreciated him for it. And I don't think he got enough credit where credit was due. But I'm glad I was finally able to catch The Devil's, um, because I'd never seen it before, and I heard so much about it, through all these years. So it was definitely fun to watch these movies. So,
absolutely.
any last words?
Amen.
Oh man! So we're gonna have a review of Psycho Gorman coming up very
Yes.
soon.
Yes.
So hopefully, I love it as
Absolutely.
much as you do. I'm looking forward to checking that out. And
I'm telling you, man. I think you're
yeah,
gonna love it.
cool.
Be honest with me. Be honest
Of
with me.
course, I will. I am.
Of course. All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. We always appreciate. And if you have any comments or you have any questions, if you want us to review something and talk about it, let us know. We'll talk to
Comments.
you later.
Comments on YouTube. Comments on YouTube.
Later.
Peace.